at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. I don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Right now, it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp on Tumblr, SoundCloud, and, of course, iHeartRadio. We are the only 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, all cannabis, all the time broadcasting network on iHeartRadio. And, of course, like a good joint, we are best when shared with friends. It is Monday, and on Monday we put a spotlight on what this wonderful plant known as cannabis can do for our bodies, our minds, our spirits, and our souls. And we always turn to the experts found at the amazing organization known as Patients Out of Time. I would encourage you to check out their website. Just by going there, you can not only learn a lot, but you can learn enough to get accreditation if you are in the field of medical care. Also, I would encourage you to check out KDK Distributors and let them know that you heard about them here on the big broadcast. They give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. And don't forget, too, when you hear the word joint, about 2.5 million people all around the world pack their bongs, their pipes, their vaporizers, and, of course, twist up a joint to take Time for Hemp. With that said, I'm going to pass this conversation over to our joint host for the day, Lynn Mathre and Al Byrne, and we're going to have a joint chat with one of our joint friends here at Time for Hemp. Lynn and Al?
Casper, Lynn, and folks, thank you for inviting us. Casper, as always, Patients Out of Time is grateful to be here on these Mondays. I think we're well over 2 years into a 10-week experience or something, but
yep.
The information that gets passed by our visitors, our guests on these days, all cannabis experts from around the world, I think has been an invaluable tool for patients, hopefully healthcare folks, and certainly the public of the United States, who seems far, far ahead of its leaders. This is Al Byrne with Lynn Mathre. We represent Patients At a Time. You can find information on our organization at medicalcannabis.com, or patientsoutofTime.org. There you will also see that you have just a little bit of time left to register and attend the 9th National Clinical Conference on Cannabis Therapeutics, to be held May 21, 22, and 23 in West Palm Beach, Florida, at the Palm Beach County Convention Center, which is a beautiful, very, very set up nice for what we're going to do conference with plenary sessions, international faculty, a system where everybody that goes that's a medical professional can get their accreditation credits, CMEs, about a dozen of them. This is a high-end educational forum specifically designed for medical professionals and patients. Nothing we do, nothing we talk about does not include patient care and how cannabis can help patients. I have taken great pride, really, over the last 20 years when Lynn and I set up Patients At a Time initially, that then and to date, the only organization that deals with cannabis, medical cannabis, in this country that I know of, that has patients as the first name of their organization is Patients At a Time. And that was done on purpose, and it remains our purpose, patients. So this educational process that we have gone through for 20 years to get to this 9th conference is the result of having patients as the focus, having highly, highly respected research done by high-end folks from all over the country come and teach the rest of us about that. One of the leading gentlemen in that category certainly is our guest today, and that's Dr. Lester Grinspoon. Good day, sir.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Okay. You and I are on the same East Coast time, Doctor, and of course our host is in Portland, Oregon, and our listening audience is all over the world. So just for the listening audience, Dr. Grinspoon is an icon here in the United States, not only for his medical cannabis knowledge and how he has passed it on to literally millions of us, but also for his leadership. It is a pleasure to have you here, sir. And I was wondering then, sir, if you could give the audience just a short background of your, how you get into medicine and why, and what brought you into the medical cannabis arena, if you would, sir.
Well, I was always interested in medicine as long as I can remember, and I went to medical school, Harvard Medical School, with the idea of becoming a surgeon, an idea I soon abandoned. When I graduated from medical school, I did a residency in psychiatry, and during that time, I was involved in anti-Vietnam War activities very early in 1966, and it was then that I met Sagan. He and I became very close friends, and we met because we were involved in the anti-Vietnam War movement, and that then flourished into a very close, lifelong relationship.
You're referring to Carl Sagan, are you not, sir? And could you just tell folks in general who Mr. Sagan was? Again, we have an international audience, and I can't imagine somebody isn't familiar with Dr. Sagan. But
right, Carl Sagan was an astronomer who taught at Cornell, but he was also very well known as someone who could explain science to lay people beautifully, and had a series called Cosmos, which was reviewed. At any rate, the point is, as we got closer, I became privy to the fact that he smoked marijuana. Now, I had never seen a marijuana joint before, let alone anybody who used them. And I was astonished, and I would say to him, Carl, you ought to give this up because it's very harmful. And he would take the joint from his mouth and hold it toward me and say, Lester, try it. You'll find it's harmless. And as I met more people in his circle, none of them unsophisticated, I would say almost all of them smoked marijuana. I began to question my assumptions about marijuana. Where did I get the understanding that it was so harmful? Now, mind you, this was long before drug-free America and so forth, and it was clear that my understanding came from the U.S. government. I decided to go into the library to really try to find the medical and scientific basis from this dastardly prohibition, which in 1967, when I got started on this in earnest, was responsible for 300,000 arrests every year. It peaked in 2011 with almost 900,000 arrests, 89% from mere possession. Most of these arrestees were young, and if it didn't involve some harsh punishment like prison, it certainly messed up the careers of these people. I should reassure people it's now down to 700,000 a year, but it's still there. In any event, I had an epiphany in the library as I came to understand that I had been 180 degrees wrong about marijuana, that it was indeed among the safest drugs that we know of. Nobody has ever died from a marijuana overdose or any other facet of marijuana. And so I then ultimately published a piece in Scientific American, which attracted a lot of attention. 3 publishers came to my office. I had no intention of writing a book, but I finally decided to do a book with Harvard University Press, and that book was was the first of my books on marijuana. Marijuana Reconsidered was published in 1971. And I became more and more interested in it, and became what is known in academic circles as an marijuana activist, and I have been that since the 70s.
Doctor, I wonder, you are a psychiatrist, so when you were doing your research in Harvard's library there, and you saw that it was non-toxic, etc., did you have any question about whether it would be harmful to the id and the ego?
To the id and the ego. Well, I had no question that it was not harmful to the id or the ego, or even consciousness. It might. Pardon? It might induce. I mean, the reason people use it recreationally is because they seek the slight alteration in consciousness that it provides, and it is in fact, I think it's probably the best of the so-called recreational drugs. It doesn't leave a hangover. It is not toxic, and it's a very it's a catalyst of sociability. So I think for all these reasons, it's accepted as a recreational drug. Now, I soon came to understand that there was a second, and that is medicine. And the second book I did on this is called Marijuana, the Forbidden Medicine, 97. And that came out in 93. There was a second edition. That was Yale University Press. Second edition in 97. And that clearly established it as a remarkable medicine which is very much underused for legal reasons, and also because allopathic medicine is the name of the medicine which describes modern Western medicine. Allopathic medicine has pretty much ignored it. I should also say that I thought, after I started using it myself, something I didn't do while I was writing the book, and I was, once I finished Marijuana Reconsidered, it was, I was asked to testify at many hearings in the Congress and around the country and in court cases, and I correctly anticipated this while I made the decision that I was going to use it eventually, but I didn't want to use it until at least it passed since the publication of the book, because I was afraid that the people asking questions would ask, "Doctor, have you ever used marijuana?" And I wanted to be able to answer truthfully, no. And so, because I was afraid if I had used it and had to answer yes, it might be seen as something that could be used to undermine my testimony. But once I started to use it, I came to believe.
Yeah, Doctor, we're going to have to take a break, sir, in just a minute. But I just want to clarify something for the record here, because you and I are I'm going to ask a couple of questions about it when we come back from the break, folks. But, Doctor, I was wondering if you could tell us when you graduated from medical school and how much education about medical cannabis or the endocannabinoid system you received in medical school.
Okay, you want me to wait until after the break?
No, sir, right now. We got a minute to go.
All right. Well, I graduated from medical school in 1955. Medical school, the word cannabis or marijuana was never mentioned, or at least if it was, I must have been asleep at the switch. None of my classmates knew anything about it either. So the medical education about cannabis was non-existent then. As for the endocannabinoid system, it hadn't been invented. I went to medical school from 1951 to 55. The endocannabinoid system didn't begin to take shape until the 1990s with the discovery of the neurotransmitters and the receptors, CB1, CB2 receptors.
Okay, well, Doctor, we're going to have to go now for a couple of minutes, and we'll come back, folks, in just a few minutes with Dr. Lester Grinspoon.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Strapped on some shoes, put on my coat. I'm heading for the door. It's time to go. It's just a short drive to paradise. Found a cash machine to fuel the dream. Got music
Yep, I'm going to Pot Fest. That's what that was called. I'm going to Pot Fest, which, by the way, is happening down in Florida. It's a cannabis fest, a festival about medical cannabis and how it can help the body, help the mind, help the spirit, and help the soul. I make it a point to make a pilgrimage down there if I were you. Plan your vacation days around this event. I'll let Mary Lynn and Al brief you again on it, and then we'll pick back up with our joint conversation with our joint guest here in the Big Joint broadcast at Time for Hemp. Mary Lynn and Al?
The conversation we're going to have in Florida is going to be, again, May 21, 22, and 23 in West Palm Beach. You can get the information, everything about it, the faculty, the agenda, the accreditation rules, the where to stay. We've still got a good price at the Marriott across the street, a beautiful hotel. It's all there at medicalcannabis.com, patientsoutaftime.org. But one of the experts that is part of the faculty at this 9th National Clinical Conference on Cannabis Therapeutics long term is Dr. Lester Grinspoon, who is our guest today. And Dr., you were talking about as you were working your way out of med school into the clinical world and doing your own research, you found that cannabis had several uses, not just one or two, one being recreational, two being medical, but you found a third use. Is that not right?
Yes. After I started to use it myself when I was 44 years old, about 1973, I soon discovered what my friend Carl Sagan had made evident to me and a few other people, that it is also something which, not for casual, not for people who just take it once a week as a social thing, but people who, and only do it for a few years, but people who get more experience with it, excuse me, have the possibility of learning that it can enhance a variety of human capacities. For example, some of them come for free. When you get high on cannabis, an ordinary meal will seem like a culinary delight. It enhances the sense of taste and appetite. It also, for anybody who's had experience with cannabis, will know without any effort that it enhances the sexual experience. But there are many other experiences. I won't go into it right now, but I urge people to read a piece by Allen Ginsberg, or was published in the Atlantic in the late. Oh, but it's also on my website, marijuana-uses.com. When he used it because he was having trouble seeing Cezanne, and he knew he was missing something. So one day he got a little bit stoned and then walked over to the Museum of Art in New York, and it was an entirely different story for him. He was able, as he says, to see him for the first time, and it isn't. It is an enhancement that just is dose related, as he said. That what he learned about Cezanne then really stuck to his ribs. So I was just going to say that my third category of usefulness is enhancement of a variety of human capacities.
Well, I'm glad you brought up sex, because we have talked, Marilyn and I have talked about that a lot, about having had this discussion on this show. Back when the Vietnam War was in its fury, there was a lot in the hippie community. There was a talk about the free love and the use of cannabis in that free love, and of course it was always derogatory. At least that was portrayed by our government. Look at these free willing kids. They'll do anything when they get stoned. But I'm more interested in, like you are, in the enhancement theory. So maybe we can use that as a discussion sometime in the future, because it's something that doesn't seem to be part of the discussion with cannabis presently, and hasn't been for a decade maybe. And I'm glad you bring it into it. It's America. They're scared of sex. Everything with sex. Oh boy. Well, look, you had quite a reputation, sir, at Harvard University in Boston, and I suspect that you and Mr. Sagan, when you say you were hanging out with some of the good guys there, these were Bostonians, the place I grew up, which is pretty white, pretty Protestant, pretty everything conservative. So you're surprising me a little bit, but Harvard's pretty conservative, and you were doing well there. But I know, and I would like you to tell our listeners, please, that you ran into a little trouble there, didn't you? Yes.
The book Marijuana Reconsidered came out in '71, as I said, and it was actually my second book. My first book was on schizophrenia. The second one was Marijuana Reconsidered. And a couple of years after that, I was told by my chief, Dr. Jack Ewalt, that he was putting me up for early promotion to full professorship. That, of course, was very exciting to me. And to make a long story short, about a month or two later, he came back. He was on the promotions committee. He came back, called me to his office, and I saw in his face that something had gone wrong. And he said, "They turned you down." And I said, "They did?" I was surprised. And he said, "Yes, they turned you down." I asked him why. And he said to me that, well, they liked your other work. I had published about 75 papers by that time. And they loved the book on schizophrenia, but they hated Marijuana Reconsidered. And I said, "They hated it?" He said, "Yes." I asked him why, and he said, "They thought it was too controversial." And I said, "My goodness, what?" Not exactly those words. Aren't we in the academy? What do they think of the scholarship? What does the fact that it's controversial have to do with it? And he held up his hands and said, hey, I'm just the messenger. I'm just the messenger. And that was the end of that conversation, except as I was leaving his office, he said, "They asked me to ask you what you're planning to do in the future." And I, just off the top of my head, said, well, I'm an intellectual will-o'-the-wisp, and I can't answer that. That wasn't quite true, because I had already begun on the amphetamine book, which was also published by Harvard University Press, and it was the basis of Senator Gaylord Nelson's holding hearings on amphetamines in the Senate, and those hearings, I was the lead witness, those hearings were ultimately responsible for the regulations that compelled physicians and other people to be more sanguine about using amphetamines. You have no idea how frequently they were used up until the mid-'70s. So that's and then
what did Harvard do then?
Pardon?
Did Harvard still ignore you, sir?
Well, I haven't finished that story because about 21 years later, in 1995 or 96, after I had just announced that I was going to become emeritus in 2000, that's like retiring, and that may have stimulated some people. I didn't know anything about this. Some people on the promotions committee apparently decided after more than 20 years that they should reconsider whether I should get the full professorship. And then I heard, not directly from them, via the grapevine, that it had been passed, and it was up to my chief to sign off on it. He signed off, but the super chief at Harvard, who resided at another hospital and who had trouble with apparently with my book on psychedelics and a few other things, he refused to sign it. And after about 7 months, said that, or after a couple of months, in the first of the year, he told my chief that he was going to wait for the new dean to come to Harvard Medical School. And that was off on July 1st. And that was months and months later, because he felt the new dean should co-sign it, as though I were promoting Darwinism, and you know, he felt creationism should be represented. At any rate, the new dean joined him without even knowing me, not even calling me, not asking me over to his office, and not even informing me. I heard via my chief that he had vetoed, the two of them had vetoed my promotion. So,
sounds like he read your book.
Oh, I doubt it. I doubt it. I don't know the answer to that for sure, but I very much doubt it.
Yeah,
I think we should get a new book out, and we could call it. We could get a new book out and call it Grinspoon Reconsidered.
Yeah, but it makes me think that it's not. My generation is going to have to die out before the medical. I gave a lecture recently at Harvard Medical School. They haven't asked me to do that for all this time, but they had to have someone who would present the opposing view, and I can tell you I wrote about that paper called Harvard Marijuana and Me, which you saw. You know, the two older people in that big audience got up and gave little diatribes about how ill-informed I was about marijuana, whereas the younger people were very enthusiastic about the lecture. You know, it made me think what I've thought many times before, that it won't be until after my generation dies out that allopathic medicine will, including what, as it's taught in medical schools, will get rid of its very antediluvian views of cannabis.
Cannabis and a lot of other natural and very helpful products that come from the natural world. Yeah, they have their blinders on for sure, Doctor. It seems to us as patients,
there's also a kind of systemic problem because, in medical school we learn about the principles of pharmacology, including psychopharmacology, but you don't learn much about all the individual drugs that are out there, and certainly not the ones that come along after you're out of medicine. That you get from journals and from drug advertising. The journal papers on drugs are usually financed by the pharmaceutical industry. So without the pharmaceutical industry being involved in this, and they can't be involved, they can't patent a plant, so they can try to develop analogs of cannabinoids that might be useful. Some of them already have, like Marinol has some use, but not much. The doctors are used to getting their clues about new pharmaceuticals from the medical journals, which pass it on from the pharmaceutical industry. And without that, I think it's difficult to make a dent.
Yeah, and we want to just reiterate, people have heard me say this before, that the last count we had, there was 157 medical schools in the United States, and only one at present that we know of, Doctor, we got to take another break in a minute, sir. Only one that we know of, Temple University in Philadelphia has a course in its medical school about the uses of cannabis and about the endocannabinoid system. So 156 still don't, and I'm not sure there's a nursing school in America that has a course. It's just, you're right, it just seems that these old thugs are just stuck there. They just won't learn. It's amazing.
Well, that's going to change
okay, folks.
very rapidly.
I hope so. It's got to change because I think the medical community, I've said this before, has abdicated its responsibility, and I'd like to talk to you about that when we come back in this issue. But it certainly has been the patients that have driven this and said, enough is enough. If the medical community is not going to help me, I'm going to do it myself. We have to take a break here, folks. We'll be just back in a few moments with Dr. Lester Grinspoon.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
Yes, stay alert with consciousness, be respectful of the world around you, and then we won't have to have a nanny state. With that said, I'm going to hush up and pass this joint conversation back to my joint friends here at Time for Hemp.
Thank you, Casper. Again, it's Al Byrne for Patients Out of Time, medicalcannabis.com. You look that up while we're talking to our guest today, Dr. Lester Grinspoon, author, leader, smart guy, a man that has seen trials and tribulations of this cannabis issue for now going on almost 50 years, been out there in front of everybody. I would dare say all of us that have been working in this issue were educated to a large degree by Dr. Grinspoon in his early work, and I appreciate everything you've ever done, Doctor, including coming on this show. Could you maybe go through a difference for our listeners who may not be really up on this stuff is that, the government tries to sell us synthetic cannabis, one particular compound, THC, called Marinol. Now other people are coming up with CBD oil. Now, those products to me are inferior. I think you agree with me. Could you explain why we're right?
Yes. I was excited when someone from the FDA I know called me I think it was 1985 and said, Dr. Grinspoon, you can stop pushing marijuana as a medicine because the U.S. government is supporting a small drug company in the development of a synthetic tetrahydrocannabinol. Now, what they came up with was called the proprietary name is Marinol, and it's the same 21 carbon molecule, the THC that you get naturally from the plant, and they put it on the market, and I began to I was very excited about it at first, But then, as I got feedback from people who used it, I did not come across a single patient who, when I asked them how was it, a patient who had used plant marijuana, smoked marijuana, or ingested the natural marijuana, and it also used Marinol, they said it's not nearly as good as whole natural marijuana. And that puzzled me, as it did many people, because we were naively believed at that time that the therapeutic as well as the recreational properties of cannabis resided in tetrahydrocannabinol. Well, to skip ahead now, we know that that's wrong. Let me just tell you where we are with that now. We've now rediscovered or discovered another cannabinoid called cannabidiol, CBD. And this cannabinoid existed by the time we discovered how useful it was medically. It was the percentage had shrunk in the marijuana plants that strains that had been developed for high THC, because in the 60s, starting in the 60s, there was so much demand for the kind of marijuana that would get one high. The growers in the Netherlands, in Western Canada, BC particularly, and Northern California were all trying to develop strains which would have very high THC levels. And they've now gotten up to strains. Well, for example, one of the highest is the one that's named after me, Dr. Grinspoon, in Europe, and it's 25% THC. We were used in the 60s, maybe 3, 4, 5%, and, up until recent years, strains that were maybe up to 15%. But now they're way up there. Now the problem has been that as the THC goes up, the CBD, the cannabidiol, goes down. We now know that the best medicine is a mixture of THC, cannabidiol, and a phytochemical from the plant called a group called the terpenes. This is what I call the ensemble, the necessary ensemble for medical use. And the part that is most important is the ratio. It's got to have terpenes, this ensemble. But what is manipulable, and it's very important, is the ratio of THC to CBD. If you take a drug which has a high ratio, that is, CBD is much higher than THC, let's say something like, for example, the stuff that is used in Dravet syndrome. These are little children who have multiple, almost continuous epileptic fits. That was first discovered with a strain that was something like 20 parts of CBD to 3 parts of THC. And nowadays, we know that if you have something which is that high in CBD and that low in THC, it's a great medicine, but it's not what you want to use to get high. If you want to get high, the ratio has to be reversed. It doesn't have to be 20 to 3, but you have to use something which is high in THC and low in CBD. If you try to use a CBD level ensemble and then want to get high, you will find it much more difficult.
Doctor, 2 questions. If I could get 2 questions in here to help me and everybody understand. If someone is a recreational user and they have a high level of THC, modern times, I don't know, pick a number, 20% THC, it's not necessarily going to harm them. What I would say an experienced recreational smoker would simply take less of that product in order to get where they wanted to go? That would be my first question. Did I make that assumption correctly?
That's absolutely right. You see, especially if one smokes it, the effect comes on so rapidly. You can. This is the first instance where one can titrate the dose, because when I tell a new patient who doesn't know just what that ratio is, I'll say, look, take one puff and just wait a minute or two. The joint or whatever it is, your pipe, whatever will go out, that's okay. Light it again, a couple of minutes later, take another joint. And do that until either you begin to feel that the nausea you're trying to treat is receding, or you're starting to get anxious, in which case, in either case, you stop. And that's how I teach people to use it, particularly in strains where they have no idea how much THC there is, let alone how much the CBD there is. You just have to take
that goes to my second question for the folks listening. This ratio, THC, CBD, terpenes, but I'm asking the question, but I am assuming, sir, that you are saying that the medicine should be made from whole plant material, that no compounds should be left out, and they shouldn't be synthetic. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct. I think that smoked marijuana, and there's no harm to smoking marijuana. That we don't even have to talk about, to the lungs. Absolutely none. But if you don't like smoking, we live in an anti-smoking culture, you can use what's called a vaporizer, which will separate out the cannabinoids from the plant, and you won't inhale any products from burning a plant. The important point is that only the smoking the bud or eating the bud will guarantee that you get the terpenes. With the oils, maybe somebody will come out with an oil that tells you exactly what's in it. But so far, I say that the ultimate medicine here is from the bud. And I think, for the time being, smoking either with or without a vaporizer is the best way to use it as a medicine or for anything else, because even if you don't know the potency, if you're smart, you'll titrate it, so you get to know roughly how many puffs of this grass you should use to get the desired effect. People don't want to get higher than they want to get. They know where they want to get, and this is the way to do it. Similarly, as a medicine, people know when the nausea goes away or the pain goes away or whatever it is they're using it for medically. And they are the best judges of the dose. And I think it's great that people can, doctors give you pills, but, they don't know whether they're right on target or below target or above target. With most of it, there's enough of a leeway in terms of the ratio of or the amount that it would take to achieve toxicity, that they err on the side of giving you more than you need, but not to the point where it's toxic.
May I change the subject just a little bit, Dr. Grinspoon? As a veteran, Casper's a veteran, Mary Lynn's a veteran. We have Memorial Day weekend is when our conference is going to be held, and we're doing that on purpose because part of the discussion about the research and the clinical uses of cannabis will be concerning veterans, their care, including head injuries like TBI type stuff, and also emotional injuries like post-traumatic stress. As a psychiatrist, what's your take on the use of cannabis for post-traumatic stress? Do you have, I think I know the answer, but I got to ask it. Do you have any reservations?
I think it is the best medicinal choice for people who suffer from PTSD. It's no accident that lots of the young men who went to Vietnam came back having discovered cannabis. It it should be used routinely. It's insane that the Veterans Administration will not officially adopt this idea, but I've seen enough of these people to know they should be allowed to use this. It's a great medicine for PTSD.
Yeah, you know, I had a reconsideration moment in Vietnam. I had never used cannabis when I got to Vietnam. I did not use cannabis in country. I was a juicer. And then I was an alcohol drinker. But what I did see was Navy troops in combat situations, not in combat, but certainly any moment there could be. And half the troops, very well depicted, by the way, in the movie Platoon. Half the troops were like me. We would get off duty and relax with alcohol, but there was a significant portion of the Navy that I was in there in the Riverine that relaxed with cannabis in the evening. And I know they took that habit back home. But what I reconsidered there was when I watched those troops, there was no problem there. They was just as magnificent as the other guys. They did their job just as well as the other guys. They had no problems being sailors. And I always wondered about this idea of this idea that these guys weren't motivated somehow. That I always thought that was a total injustice. It still is an injustice. And I wonder if that is still pervasive in psychiatry, doctor. Is that still a problem?
Well, that was, there are many myths about marijuana. One of them was the amotivational syndrome, and that is just what you call it, a myth. For example, I go back to my personal experience here because it's the best. Carl Sagan, whom I knew very well, he was the hardest working man I've ever met. I mean, he was always working. He carried around a little tape recorder to record things that he wanted to write and so forth when he got ideas. He was a user of cannabis, and he felt it was helpful to him. So I just don't. Cannabis can be used by people who are averse to work or can't figure out what it is they want to do with their lives, and they without this kind of motivation, they sit around and they smoke grass, and people have in the past, at any rate, seen the grass as responsible for their hanging out ways, but it's not.
Okay. Well, again, doctor, as always, the clock rules, and believe it or not, sir, an hour is done, and we have to leave you here. But folks, take heart. Dr. Grinspoon has agreed to come back and continue to educate us about not only the history of the cannabis plant and medicine, but also his own history and his own impact on what we do today. So, doctor, again, thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you again, sir. And for the folks out there, we got to go. We got to scoot. But again, this is Al Byrne and Marilyn Mathre for Patients at a Time. We'll look at what we're doing at medicalcannabis.com. And until next week, same time, same place, take care.
And don't forget, we are a group of people who are dedicated to ending prohibition. And we are easily found at timeforhemp.com. Spreaker, SoundCloud, and of course, iHeartRadio. And the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.